Chorus of protests over big money and hard times reverberated around the world today as tens of thousands took to the streets from across the U.S. to Europe and all the way to Johannesburg, railing against banks, corporate profits, and the wealthy. But it was in Rome that things turned violent, with reports of at least 70 injured, cars set afire, and banks firebombed. This day of global outrage was born of the non-violent Occupy Wall Street movement that started here in New York. But it has easily found traction in parts of the world where folks are already simmering under the collar from harsh economic austerity measures. Collectively, their anger is clear, their specific demands less so. But nonetheless, they've got the world's attention. NBC's Keir Simmons leads off our coverage from London tonight.
This was the day protests on Wall Street went worldwide and in places turned violent. In Rome, some protesters interrupted a peaceful demonstration to smash bank windows and set fires. There were running battles with water cannon and tear gas. Reports say 20 were injured, protesters and police. Up to 100,000 have been expected for a demonstration inspired by events in America and fueled by anger at government cuts. In London, protesters were prevented from getting close to the stock exchange. There were 5 arrests, though the day was largely peaceful.
This is about some people having money and living good lives, some people not having money and suffering because of it.
A lot of people I work with have lost their jobs. My pension's been raided.
There are several thousand protesters here in London, part of a movement beginning in the United States, now spreading around the world. 5,000 gathered in Germany near the European Central Bank. The same slogans adopted in the US seen today in Germany and in Taiwan and in Australia. Messages that have gone global, spread through the internet.
We want an alternative, one that's based on human need and human rights, not on, corporate greed.
In Hong Kong, they lay on the sidewalk. In Paris, Poland and Portugal, small groups demonstrated. But in Spain, organisers estimated that 300,000 took to the streets of Madrid. Large numbers already furious over high unemployment there. Tonight, some streets in the Italian capital resemble a battlefield. Burnt-out vehicles include a police van. The Prime Minister called for arrests. The protesters calling for change around the world.
Extreme weather in the Iberian Peninsula. In Spain, torrential rains triggered heavy floods on Wednesday, killing at least one person and forcing hundreds to flee their homes. A 31-year-old man was found dead in Arroyo de Lojanco, Jaén, after he was struck by lightning during a storm. A 9-year-old boy from Almodóvar del Campo, Ciudad Real, is still missing after he was swept away while traveling by car with his parents. The heavy rain has caused the Genil River to overrun its banks, forcing the evacuation of 1,000 homes in Écija and reaching unprecedented levels in Córdoba. One resident tries to surmise the damage near Sevilla.
My car is down there and I don't even know how it is.
The Spanish Meteorological Agency has kept its weather alert in place for the southwest and the Canary Islands, as more rain is expected. Meanwhile, Portugal is picking up the pieces. A tornado lashed Tomar and other central cities, leaving a trail of destruction and injuring at least 30 people. Most of the victims were children at a local nursery school where the roof collapsed. Mariam Ishani, Reuters.
Will continue to cause havoc across Europe, with no sign of a let-up for the weekend. In France, the southeastern city of Avignon found itself under 10 to 20 centimetres of snow, toying with those trying to get around. Not everyone was downhearted, though.
Sympathique.
It's nice, it's funny, from time to time, but not every day. The big freezes caused chaos to rail services. Eurostar is once again operating a limited service, a headache for passengers. I'm supposed to take the train tomorrow, but I'm still not sure. It's just happened this weekend and I bought my tickets 3 months ago, so I'm waiting. The UK has been especially badly hit. Temperatures dropped to a jaw-jingling -21 Celsius in Scotland overnight, and the Arctic conditions have made driving treacherous. More adventurous types, however, have been making the most of the wintry weather. Switzerland has also come under the cosh. Earlier, authorities were forced to close the Gotthard tunnel in the Italian part of the country, causing heavy tailbacks. Despite most of mainland Spain remaining on high alert for fresh snowfall and bitterly low temperatures, torrential rain in southern Andalusia caused severe flooding, particularly in Granada. Elsewhere in Albania, thousands of residents were evacuated from their homes after floods forced authorities to open the gates of a hydroelectricity dam in the north of the country.
Russia's in flames. The hottest summer on record has also become one of the most destructive.
Massive forest fires have already burnt about 1,000 hectares of land in Russia, killed more than 40 and left more than 2,000 homeless. With wind speed of 20 meters per second, it's moving too fast. As you can see behind me, it's approaching now, leaving behind a trail of devastation.
This used to be a small, picturesque village nestling in a beautiful pine forest some 150 kilometers south of the Russian capital, Moscow. A paradise to the 300 people that live there, with a kindergarten, a church and a community hall. It will never be the same again. It took just minutes for a frightening display of Mother Nature's full force to change it forever.
Wildfires have been twice as destructive this year as in the same period of time last year. So far, some 300,000 hectares of forest have been burnt down.
And the Emergencies Ministry says the situation in Siberia and the Far East, the worst affected regions, is likely to get worse. Primetime's Peter Oliver has the latest and joins us now. Peter, what is the situation at the moment?
Well, we just heard some of the statistics there. 300,000 hectares is a huge amount of land that's currently suffering from these wildfires that are raging in the far east of Russia as well as in Siberia. Now, to put that in perspective, this is twice as much land that's affected this year as was last year. Last year, of course, anybody who was in Moscow or in the outlying regions would be able to testify just how bad the smoke was around the city. Of course, not just Moscow, of course, around the whole of the country. It affected Russia's ability to produce grain, as well as took many lives. The death rate in Moscow, in fact, doubled during that period last year. So this is what they're trying to hope. It's not that situation at the moment around the capital. However, in that area in the Far East and in Siberia, they're seeing very, very strong, very severe wildfires that are raging. Greenpeace have said that, in their opinion, that they are much more severe and much more difficult to tackle wildfires than we saw last year. So I'll be hoping that the authorities can try and get them under control as soon as possible.
In the U.S. Northeast, an unusually heavy early snowstorm, and you see it there on the right, people digging out from under mountains of snow. Well, it knocked down power lines. It cut electricity to millions of homes and businesses. Let's begin with the flooding in Thailand. For that, we bring in Guillermo Arduino from the International Weather Center. And I want viewers to see the full picture here, if we can show as well some of the full pictures of what happened in Thailand so they get a visual sense of what happened. Look at this, Guillermo.
Yeah.
Well, at least buses and cars and things like that are able to run, but look at that man who's kind of jerry-rigged his bike so he's a little bit further off the ground.
I think that, it happens when we watch local television here in the States. Sometimes we talk about a flood and it's actually 1 block, 2 blocks, 1 corner, and when you look at it in that square-shaped screen, it looks like a disaster. Well, this is one of those disasters, I think. Now, if you are an international viewer, you're thinking, I'm going to Bangkok, am I going to have a problem? Well, it's a problem. Well, it's going to be very uncomfortable. It's going to be problematic to drive around and move around the city, but the international airport is open. You're going to be able to go there and to leave. Now let's try to give a little bit of perspective to it, and we go a little bit farther north into north of Bangkok. This is a before picture, July 11, 2011. So look at what happens afterwards. That's the river, and this all in blue is floods. That gives you a
sense of the area. I mean, what are we talking about if you compare it, for instance, to, I don't know, a U.S. city or a European city?
We're saying the size of Denmark.
Right.
The extent of the floods. In width, 150 kilometers. So it's a large area.
Teresa Riggi has been jailed for 16 years for killing her 3 young children after fearing she would lose them in a custody battle. 8-year-old twins Austin and Luke and their 5-year-old sister Cecilia were stabbed to death at a townhouse in Edinburgh last August. Their blood-stained bodies were discovered lying side by side, each with 8 stab wounds.
This British man showed no emotion as he was sentenced to 2 life prison terms for killing his wife and 9-month-old baby.
A consecutive sentence would be purely symbolic. For that reason, I am imposing concurrent sentences for the murders of Rachel and Lillian Entwistle. That means that the defendant will serve, the actual sentence that the defendant will serve will be for both murders.
Neil Entwistle was convicted Wednesday of shooting his wife Rachel and their baby Lillian inside their rented Massachusetts home. He fled to his native England a day after the killings.
Apparently ended in murder in this Michigan home. Authorities say a 17-year-old is accused of killing his mom in a most unusual way, all witnessed by the boy's 12-year-old sister.
I just seen the little girl jumping up and down on the sidewalk, heard the screams. I got down here and little girl said her brother was in the house beating her mother with a frying pan.
The mom of 4 died at the hospital. A number of neighbors tried to help, running to the house after hearing the girl's screams.
I kicked the door in, and when I did, she was laying right there on the ground.
The 17-year-old suspect is hospitalized in serious condition. It appears his mom tried to defend herself, maybe with a knife that was found at the scene.
Seeing her with the knife on the side, so you can tell she tried to do something, and first response was to try to get her out, but we didn't know who else was in there, what he had or anything, so we kind of backed out.
The teen had bandages on his arms when police took him away. Myra Lopez.
They are the faces of a frightening trend, all teenage victims of the knife crime culture. At the latest scene of a fatal stabbing, detectives continue the hunt for clues. It is a depressingly familiar picture, another quiet street marked by murder. 16-year-old Shakilis Townsend died after he was attacked in Thornton Heath in South London, stabbed in the chest by a hooded gang. He lay bleeding in the arms of a stranger.
And he started saying stuff to me, saying, I don't want to die. I don't want to die. Where's my mum? Like, go get my mum, Nicole.
2 knives were found nearby, and the police are still looking for the 3 teenagers behind the attack. Shakilis Townsend is the 18th London teenager stabbed to death this year. Another 16-year-old Ben Kinsella died last weekend after a night out. The problem is growing and not helped by the resignation of